Good afternoon. My name is Yori Berry, the Director of Youth Partnerships here at the National Network for Youth. Today, we will be presenting a webinar on the 3-year external evaluation of our National Youth Advisory Council and presenting some key findings, talking about the importance and even strategies for capturing youth voice in our work, and be able to hear from some young people. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me. So if someone can just type something in the chat box to let me know that the audio is fine, we will go ahead. Okay. Olivia said it's good. So today on our call presenting, we have Ben Saldana, a member of our National Youth Advisory Council, as well as Olivia Lutz from Cardia Services. She serves as their research and evaluation manager, as well as Sade Hamilton, another member of our National Youth Advisory Council, and myself. A brief overview of the agenda. I'm hearing a bit of feedback, so if you can mute your phone. Not really sure how I'm hearing sound. Okay, perfect. So to go through the agenda of what we will be speaking on today, we'll have a brief introduction, which we just did, talking about the presenters. I'll say a bit about our objectives and outcomes of this webinar. We will give you a brief overview of the evaluation that we've done of our partnership work with our National Youth Advisory Council over the past 3 years. We'll go a little bit into key findings and just being able to learn about some of the things that we learned from our young leaders through different evaluation methods. Then we will hear from 2 members of our National Youth Advisory Council just talking about youth voice and their perspective on what they believe works, things they might recommend that we as leaders avoid in our desire or quest to really get some authentic feedback in real time from the young leaders and the young people that we are serving, and then looking ahead and just talking more about our work and some of the offerings that we have for different communities, specifically those who either are presently or looking in the future to partnering with young leaders. So just in terms of the objectives and outcomes of this webinar, we really just want to share some of the things that we learned and hope that we can not just begin, but continue a conversation on the importance, 1, of evaluation, but then 2, just real strategies that would work, of being able to set up mechanisms within your organizations and within your programs to really capture the voice, the recommendations, the strategies of the young people that you're serving, so that you're able to improve programming and even policies in real time to better serve them and to help us as leaders and as organizations more effectively and efficiently meet our objectives. So just in terms of our evaluation, the National Network for Youth, we are truly committed to authentically partnering with young people, specifically those who have experienced homelessness. Many of our young leaders, they have aged out of the foster care system, intersected with the child welfare system, juvenile justice system, are survivors of trafficking. We're committed to partnering with these young people to learn, to improve, and to collaboratively come together and really just share what we believe are some best practices, and then ultimately to be able to provide support beyond our organization to other people, like those of you who have joined this call and others who have just partnered with us and been partners with us in this work of how we can continue to push this movement forward. So the evaluation specifically is evaluation that we have collected beginning in the fall of 2016 up until this past summer. And the evaluation came from 32 of the young leaders who have served on our National Youth Advisory Council, including those who are present-day members like Ben and Charday, who you'll hear from later in this call. Part of the work that our young people do, we train them to take an active role in crafting policy advocacy plans. They work with us and speak with some of our partners that have included the American Bar Association, the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. We've done work with the Family and Youth Services Bureau and even other local organizations and universities that we will be working with in the future, but really working and speaking to leaders in those spaces of how they can improve policy specifically for young people who either have or are presently experiencing homelessness, as well as just feedback for how they can better work with and partner young people. And on the slide, you'll also see this thing at the bottom is kind of blocking things a bit, but some of the states that we have partnered with, the only state that you're not able to see based on this is the District of Columbia. So we will be talking about some of the key findings from very specific events and conferences and different activities that we've had for our young leaders, specifically from the fall retreat, Heal Day, which happens during our national summit, where our leaders get to meet with either their elected officials or senior staff of their elected congresspersons and senators, as well as an annual follow-up survey that we distribute to our team. We've done individual one-on-one interviews, and we'll talk a little bit more about our data sources and analysis. And to speak a bit more about the key findings, Olivia from Cardia, which has been our incredible research and evaluation partner throughout this work, will kind of chime in to tell you a little bit more about what we found.
Great. Thanks so much, Yori. So the slides that we'll be sharing today are just little highlights from the report, so there will be more detail in the full report that will get released, I believe, after this webinar. But right now, we're looking at some response to the fall retreat. So Youth Advisors' response was very positive. We see that with 95% of respondents sharing that they were satisfied or very satisfied with fall retreat. In addition, Youth Advisors reported improved understanding of the legislative and policymaking process, increased confidence in their ability to advocate for change, as well as a stronger sense of support and community from NN4Y staff and other Youth Advisors as a result of that experience. We'll move on to the next slide, Yori, which highlights some qualitative feedback from the participants. So this is something that someone wrote. The retreat had an extraordinary flow to it. Everything that was planned worked out accordingly, and everyone seemed to be impressed by that. I believe having segments led by council members who have been serving was beneficial and added a much-needed dynamic to the retreat as well. Next, we'll look at some highlights from Hill Day. So over half of those who responded reported successful interactions with policymakers, where these individuals committed to supporting legislation, writing recommendations for local demonstration grants, or supporting more youth-led initiatives in their state. And as one youth advisor noted, they said, I was able to use the power of my voice to help youth in my state and bring back knowledge on what we can do to make it better. And we can dive a little bit deeper into some of the Hill Day findings. So youth advisors were asked to rate how their confidence in their ability to engage with specific policymakers shifted as a result of those interactions. And we can see that across types of legislative positions, whether it's legislative assistants, representatives, or senators, over 80% of youth advisors reported improved confidence, whether it improved a little bit or a lot, but we see that close to half or more than half said that it improved a lot across all those types of policymakers, which is very exciting to see. So not surprisingly, when asked to reflect on their national summit experience overall, about 3/4 rated their satisfaction as very satisfied, so those are the people in blue, and 1/4 rated their satisfaction as satisfied, so the person in yellow. Related to the annual follow-up survey, youth advisors were asked to rate how their ability to accomplish specific advocacy and engagement tasks changed as a result of their participation on the NYAC. Overwhelmingly, youth advisors reported improvements in their skills. We see that about 2/3 or 66% of youth advisors reported their ability to express their views in front of a group of people improved a lot. Over 80% indicated that their ability to create new partnerships with groups interested in helping them with a problem improved. And about 1/3 felt their ability to create a plan to address a problem improved a lot. And finally, we'll look into some of the key findings from the interviews. So at the end of each year of service, youth advisors were invited to participate in interviews. And this is just highlighting some of the key themes that we saw across interviews. So there was a lot of expression of gratitude for the opportunities to learn and grow alongside national policy experts and young people with similar lived experiences. Many interviewees credited the NYAC with the training opportunities and supportive NN4Y staff with giving them the confidence and the power to use their stories and voices as tools to facilitate social change related to youth homelessness prevention. Interviewees also described improvements in their ability to work well with others and communicate effectively as a result of serving on the council. And when asked to think about their biggest successes as youth advisors, many mentioned successful public speaking events and advocacy efforts that resulted in funding for housing programs for homeless youth. And then finally, in thinking about next steps, youth advisors expressed high confidence in their ability to advocate for social change in their local communities and a determination to carve career paths that support or intersect with efforts to end youth homelessness. So now we get into the piece about data sources and analysis. So Cardia led the development of all of the monitoring and evaluation tools that NN4Y staff administered with youth advisors. And youth advisors completed a retrospective pre-test, post-test evaluation at the conclusion of the fall retreat, Hill Day prep webinar, as well as the National Summit on Youth Homelessness. In addition, youth advisors received invitations to participate in the annual follow-up survey and key informant interviews at the end of each year of service. And how we analyzed all this data, we employed descriptive statistical measures to analyze the quantitative data and then used thematic content analysis to identify key themes from the key informant interviews and qualitative feedback. And that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Olivia. So before we go into talking and hearing from two of our young leaders about what they feel, one, why they feel Youth Voice Matters, tips for capturing the voices and the feedback of young people as we aim to improve vote programming and policies, and then even some tips or recommended things that we should either do, keep doing, or avoid. One of the things that I will say and note is that evaluation was very important, not just to me as one of the leaders working with our National Youth Advisory Council, but even organizationally, there were very few things that we did with our young people where I didn't want their feedback immediately. I think sometimes as organizations, as leaders, it's so easy to kind of just get caught up in the busyness of our work, in the deliverables, that we never really stop intentionally and consciously stop to pause to examine whether or not what we're doing actually puts us on track, to not just achieve our goals, but to stay true to our mission, and everything that we stand for as leaders organizationally as we endeavor to meet the goals and objectives that are before us. So one of the things that was very important to us was that we included young people every step of the way in not just the planning, but also the execution of things that were designed for them and the work that our greater organization was doing on behalf of young people who had experienced very similar things to the things that our young leaders did. So after every retreat, at times before, a lot of the informal interviews that you saw here before the retreat, I sent out a survey. In fact, our fall retreat for this year has just been finalized. Ben and Sade can tell you one of the things that they got in their inbox today was a survey asking them, hey, this is what we're thinking. We know as leaders of the organization and as those who are planning and executing the retreat, what we would like to see. But I think an important thing that I feel has been very critical to our success as a group and being able to retain many of our young leaders who, wanted to stay on even after their term was up was being able to ask questions of them, like I asked today, of what is it that you would like to see? What are some trainings that you feel would be beneficial to you in this point? And as a leader, that can seem like an extra step, right? Or something that would create more work, especially if I already have a tentative agenda and schedule for things like a retreat or like a conference that our young people are participating in. But what I found is that the success of what we're doing is much greater, and the young people tend to be more active in participating in something that they have bought into, not just after the fact, but that they've been able to kind of contribute to the shaping and the formation of that particular thing. So right now, I will turn it over to Ben and Sade, who have so graciously volunteered to say a little bit more about why Youth Voice matters. I'll just let you know that they are at work right now. One of them, they have their little one, so please bear with us. If you hear, little baby sounds in the background, it's all good. Ben and Sade.
Good afternoon. I just want to thank you for taking your time out to join this webinar. My name is Sade, and we have Ben. And today we'll be discussing why youth matters and tips for capturing youth voice.
Okay. I think before we actually get into all these tips and tricks we have to offer, it's important for us to understand what exactly youth voice is. And it's defined basically as the distinct ideas, opinions, attitudes, knowledge, and actions of young people as a collective body. So Sade and I basically came up with a few points that we'd like to touch on. And the first one is the importance there is in including the voices and input of young people that your programs are serving.
Well, the reason why I feel like it's important to include the voices of us youth is because we're the ones who have experienced it. We're the ones who have lived through it, or is living through it. We're the ones who have the answers for the problem, because we're the ones who are in need of services and resources. So now, Ben, I want to tell you. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I wanted to just add that it's important to include the voices and input of the young people your programs are serving, because it's probably, in my opinion, the best way to ensure that your program is fit for the young people you're serving. It also gives us it allows us a way to express what we're feeling and what we've gone through, and it'll also assist in improving the future programming for youth that will come through your programs. And the third point would be why we feel the evaluation and getting feedback from the NYSC was critical in the success of our council. I put here that, oh, sorry, you're good. Go ahead.
No, it's on you.
I put in here that evaluation and frequent feedback were extremely critical components of the success of the NYSC, because it served as a form of true measurement that we were able to successfully use to implement and adjust components to the actual experience of the members on the council. And not only do we get to talk about what was successful and not throughout the whole experience of both retreat, summit, and everything in between, it was also a form of expression of what we were going through, each and every hour as members. We were able to express, what we liked and disliked, what we wanted to see, what we've done that we think could be implemented into the council itself. So I think that through all that evaluation and feedback, it was really simplistic to implement all these things, which could have been much more difficult had we not gathered all that data successfully.
Point 4 is, how does it make you feel when you realize or recognize that organizational and program leaders can ask for your input and actually make a change based on what you recommend? I feel like that is very important because they have a say so if we don't have a say so, and just being able to express like our stories, being able to share our stories and to actually have them listen and be able to go out and put it on a bill or help write that bill or sign that bill can really make a difference.
Yeah, I think it's equally important to acknowledge that recognition is just as important as feedback. Because oftentimes I think the feedback is collected and there isn't always recognition presented to the young people that is being asked from. And I mean, personally, when I'm recognized by an organizational leader and my input's actually used to positively alter a program, it's more so an empowering and you're given a sense of importance in the whole process. I think it also motivates and makes youth feel eager to continue offering their insight in the future, whether that be in programs they end up working for or may end up back into, depending on their circumstances. So the last 2 points here are talking about creative ways that we can evaluate the young people. So, Sharday, do you have any tips that you listed?
It can depend on your program, but always I like the online evaluation due to the fact that I'm always on my phone. I can just do it on the go. Sometimes a paper evaluation is hard to keep up with. So I prefer the online one.
Yeah, I think another creative thing that I've personally done and seen executed successfully was letting the youth that are in your programs make collages to demonstrate what they feel they've gained or learned in some fashion through the programmatic structure. Because I think most youth that are in programs in general are very creative and yearn for more creative ways to express creative outlet for them to express themselves and their experiences. It's also a more fun way to analyze the data in general. I think that's a very creative way to do it. Also, stuff like surveys that the youth create, I think that's another fun way that you could do data analysis that includes the youth and their creativity. And then to round it out, the last point is just some offerings we have about what we should probably be refraining from when we're doing programmatic things like surveys and things of that nature. So, Sharday, do you have some?
I feel like some surveys and stuff should be anonymous because some people might be, a little afraid of saying their name and things. So if you have anonymous stuff, things that'll work out.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just getting out of my work, man. I put here that one commonality that I've seen in surveys that I've taken over time and even currently, that sometimes surveys include language that youth may not be able to comprehend. So I think being very clear and and simple through the survey process or the evaluation process is very helpful, not only to the young people, maybe people collecting data, but more so the young people, because I remember at one point taking a survey and maybe not understanding the question, which in turn, my response is just to answer whatever I think the right answer would be, and that in turn creates maybe not the best sense of data for the program. I also put in here that maybe too many open-ended questions could be another hindrance in the data analysis process, because I know that when I get a lot of open-ended, I have to think really hard. And even though I like to write, two open-ended questions in a survey are usually just enough for me before I'm exhausted. So I think that that consideration in the process of creating your evaluations could also be very beneficial to your program. And that is all I have here. So we're going to turn it back over to Yori, actually, and she will be discussing looking ahead.
Thank you, Ben and Sade. Really appreciate your input and honest feedback. And speaking of that, one of the last things that Sade said was talking about anonymity when having young people to fill out the surveys. This isn't always possible, but another, thing that was mentioned was the preferring an online format to be able to contribute, because then, they can fill it out on a computer, it can be on their phone, because young people are almost always, especially those of them who have phones, right, on their phones. But speaking of the electronics, I think it's also important to note, and definitely something that we're not oblivious to, is the lack of technology at times for some of the young people. So I think, just understanding the young people that you're serving, understanding what they have access to, and if there are any barriers, doing whatever you can as an organization and as a leader to eliminate those barriers, to be able to get the feedback that you would need from them. But much of especially the online evaluations, the yearly evaluations, those things were anonymous. And one of the things that I always encourage them to do, even as they're speaking today, right, always is, of course, be respectful, but stand in your truth and speak your truth. I don't want to censor you. I care more and I can learn more from you telling the truth than just you saying what you believe I want to hear or what we may want to hear as an organization. If there's something we're not doing well, if there's something that, we can improve, or a growth opportunity that you have identified, I would rather know that so that we're both able to be happy and to walk away happy, and not, one party kind of walking away because they assumed what they did was right and that the young people really bought into it. So most, if not almost all of our surveys, except of course the informal, more qualitative interviews, they were anonymous and they were sent directly to Cardia, which is having that external evaluation source. It's great to do internal evaluation, which is something that we also did, not just within our National Youth Advisory Council, but, just generally within the organization. But I think one of the big things and the big benefits, and something that, we truly walked away valuing throughout this 3-year process of getting feedback, regular feedback from our young people, was being able to work with an external evaluator. Of course, there were some challenges with that, because I may not be seeing the numbers in real time to kind of know who's contributing when, but it probably was more important for the young people to feel like, hey, my name isn't attached to this if I'm going to say something that might be perceived as harsh, right? That's very, critical, or it's something negative that I want to highlight. I think more importantly, we wanted them to feel safe, to be able to tell the truth, because at the end of the day, that was what was going to make and help our program to be stronger. So those are just two things that I want to add before we go into looking ahead. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this call, although our National Youth Advisory Council has been in existence longer than, say, the past 3 years. The past 3 years is really the time frame that the evaluation report, the full report will be available and sent out in the upcoming week. So if you're a member of NN4Y, or you're subscribed to get our newsletter and other reports and information from us, You can look forward to receiving the full report with all of the findings from the evaluation. If not, my recommendation is definitely that you sign up so that you can receive it when it comes out. But based on the evaluation work that we have been doing, as well as just the general work of our council, there were a lot of things that we learned, specifically around how to partner with young people. And while we don't know everything, there are things that I feel, and I'm sure our young leaders on the call and those who aren't on the call would feel that they would love to contribute to other organizations and entities who are looking to do more authentic and effective partnering with the young people at the organizational level, locally, statewide, and beyond. So we have been, I believe we launched this in March at our national summit, and we've already had the wonderful opportunity to begin working with some entities, specifically those who are doing statewide projects engaging young people, as well as partnering with universities to provide consulting to them. And if there's anyone on the line, just based on the work and the information that we've learned, both through the evaluations and just our general work, myself, in partnership with specific young people on our team, are able to provide different services to support you in this work if it's something that you're looking for. In terms of how that could look, it could be in the form of webinar training for your team or other members of your community who are engaged in this work. It could be virtual meetings, actual in-person, single and multi-day convenings with myself and young leaders who have the lived experience. And in terms of what that would be around, anything from application and recruitment to youth board design, which tends to be kind of one of the more popular things, and helping you figure out what operationally, what does that look like? What should the agenda of our youth board look like? Strategic planning, messaging, and storytelling, specifically from the young people who have the lived experience. How do you get them and train them to tell their stories in a way that will impact programming and impact policy without re-traumatizing them? Youth leadership development, which is a big part of what happens at our fall retreat that we gathered intel on, and the National Summit as well as just other activities, and of course, program evaluation. And for that, if anyone were to ask me specifically, hey, who would you recommend for if we were trying to get some external evaluation, I would have to say Cardia, because our experience working with them has been so pleasant. They have been flexible in terms of working with me and working with other staff of our organization. They are great, and I can't say that enough. So as we close, we've left some time for any questions that anyone would have. So I'm going to open it up for Q&A. I'm not really sure if I'm able to unmute you all, but for now, maybe if we could just, if you have a question, if you could type it in the box, and if it's for a specific panelist, then indicate that as well. You can put your questions in the chat box or in the question box. I'm not seeing any questions so far. I don't know if that means there aren't any questions. I'll give it about 30 more seconds in case somebody's typing. And if not, we definitely know everyone is busy in the middle of their day, so we definitely won't hold you. Okay. There appears to be no questions, so I'm assuming everything was pretty straightforward. If you have any questions that arise after this webinar, feel free to reach out to myself or the organization. Generally, that can be at info@NN4YOUTH.org, and then my email, Yori, YORRI.BERRY @NN4YOUth.org. But other than that, I definitely want to thank each of the panelists, Olivia, Ben, and Charday, for taking time out of your day to contribute to this webinar, as well as each of you for tuning in and listening. Wishing everyone a amazing day and rest of the week. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.